I think it was fairly obvious that I was going to go with another Demerara rum fairly soon, because I alluded to this product very briefly in the last review that I did of the King of Diamonds that DDL put out in the 1980s for local consumption. There were others, though, for the local market and a nascent export market, and that's this one here. This is the Guyana Distillers Limited El Dorado Bonded Reserve Demerara rum. All those terms require a little bit of explanation. First of all, DDL itself was founded in 1983 with the merger of two conglomerates rum operation. Now, that was Sandbach Parker, which had the Diamond Liquors Company, and Booker's McConnell, which had the Guyana Distillers Limited. Booker's McConnell and both of those companies actually had a long and storied colonial history in Guyana. They managed the sugar estate, if not actually owned them outright, and they employed local people. Yesu Posada, I believe, worked for one of them. And after independence in 1966, there was a gradual movement to kind of like nationalize these companies and bring sugar production into the Guyanese government's hands, which is where Guyana Sugar Corporation was founded. But that's a separate issue. The important thing to understand is that Guyana Distillers Limited was the Booker's McConnell operation that was based out of Ifluk, which of course is not a coincidence. If we recall, many of the famed stills that we know about, and even some of the marks that we talk about, come from Ifluk, the most famous perhaps being the UF30E, which was a Parcellera rum that was made in 1985. The thing is, though, this little sample that I actually have still on hand from Guyana Distillers Limited kind of begs the question of, first of all, how old it is, which we don't know, which stills made it, which we also don't know. And I don't think we can really tell very much more about the history of the place, except that because it won, it doesn't, the photograph that I will accompany this thing on in the written review actually mentions that it won a double gold medal in Leipzig, Germany in 1982. Now, given that DDL was founded in 1983, and slowly but surely, all the operations were consolidated into Diamond, leading up to 2000, 2001, when all the stills were finally there. I think we could reasonably say that this was bottled just around 82, 83, and it was probably made for some time before that. And it also tells us, even though I've suggested otherwise, that the El Dorado brand predates the DDL's founding by quite a long way. It's possible, and I can't say this for sure, that they were there since the 50s, or at the very least the 1960s, when Booker's McConnell had a much more preeminent place in the Guyana sugar industry as well as rum production. But I'd have to do some more research to tell you that for sure, and I'm actually not entirely certain. So we don't know how old the rum is, but given that it came from GDL, it's very likely that was the French Saval still. It could be something else, but of course it is a blend, right? And it is 40%, and beyond that, there's not much more to go on. You know, if you were to smell this rum now, after having gone through all these incredible choices we have of Demerara rums and even individual marks and from individual stills, we would be hard-pressed to actually say that from the smell alone whether this was a Guyanese rum or not. It's a little bit thin at 40%, of course. It has a sort of weak sweetness to it. It's a little bit dry. It seems to be clean enough. I did test it earlier, and it does, yes, test out at 40%. There is a little bit of walnuts. There's a little bit of sour fruits, not too much. It's all very, very mild. And of course, there's nougat, walnuts, caramel, a little bit of cinnamon in there somewhere, some vanilla, of course, which suggests a little bit more aging. But it's a bit scratchy, and it really isn't all that interesting, except in the fact that it does have those those smells, and that speaks well for it. It's certainly better than the King of Diamonds that I was talking about before. It's a little bit better to taste it. I actually quite like this. Even at 40%, it presents itself really well. It's a bit more firm. It's not scratchy as the nose suggested that it might be. Again, you've got the walnuts, you've got some sour cabbages in there, you've got a little bit of salt brine, olives, that kind of thing. There is a nice little bit of prunes in there, vanilla, spices, cinnamon, and caramel, leather, smoke. There's just a bit more here than what we're used to, but it doesn't actually answer the question of which still it is. Now, I suggest that the wooden stills had no part to play in the blend that made up this rum, because the anise notes, the heavy smoke, the licorice, the pencil shavings, that kind of thing that characterize the Versailles, the Port Morant, or the Enmore, just aren't here. So I do believe that this is the French Saval still, which of course can be dialed into a multitude of different configurations. And as a consequence, it does taste nice, quite good. But you just can't tell that it's a Guyanese. You really can't. In point of fact, it could just as easily be a low-rent Jamaican. It could be a little bit of a Barbados. It has that pot column still vibe to it that is subtle, but definitely there to me. And with a little bit of imagination, and if you really want to turn off your nose a bit, perhaps you could say that it's perhaps even something of a Cuban rum if you want to, but it's just too tough to tell, and it's too far back, and we certainly don't know anything more about it. I bought this at auction in 2014, and I reviewed it in 2015, and I didn't pay very much money for it. I think most people kind of got put off by the fact that, like, what is this, right? And they didn't know anything about it, but I knew it was from Guyana. I knew it was from a fairly long time ago. And these days, I don't believe I've ever seen this come up on auction in the last few years. I wouldn't buy another bottle of it because, as with the King of Diamonds, this is one of these rums that you buy because it's a piece of liquid history. There is nothing about this rum that when you taste it, that would tell you that it is the equal of low-rent El Dorados that are made today with their fascinating, conglomeration of the different stills, output, and so on. You got nothing of that. So at best, it's a piece of heritage. It's a rum from a go. We don't even know how old it is, unfortunately. It simply is a decent entry-level rum that you can sip if you so desire. And if you don't, you can mix it with no problems whatsoever. If you don't think it's sacrilege to take something that comes from so far back, and tells you what rums were made like back then, it's up to you on this one. I can't even remember how much I paid for it, but it wasn't very much, perhaps £50 or something like that. If you do find it, perhaps give it a shot, but come by me. I'll share mine with you. That's pretty much it for today. And as a last point, I will just mention that I did score this 7 points back in the day. And 10 years later, I think that's still a pretty reasonable score for what this is. And that's where I'm going to leave it today. Take care, everybody, and have a really great weekend. I'll talk to you next time.